If the truth be told, if you look at all the Francophone countries, all minerals discovered and yet to be discovered are owned by France. All oil discovered and yet to be discovered is owned by France. We get royalties ranging from 12 to 15%. I was in Kimberley, South Africa, a few years back, and we were just being tourists. Almost every 30 minutes, there was a 737 landing and taking off, landing right into South Africa, picking up. And so finally I said to my tour guide, what are all these planes doing? This is not an international airport. Why are there all these planes coming? He said, oh, they're picking up the diamonds. And the diamonds are going straight to the London Stock Exchange. He said, yeah, and when the diamonds get over there, we're not even sure how they're reporting them. So the true diamonds that are coming out of here, we may never quite know. But South Africa gets royalties. DRC, they have tarmacs right in the jungle. 737s are landing in the jungle, picking up that coal town and taking off, right out of the country, in and out. The mining is done by the French companies. The oil drills are run by the French companies. Now you understand what I was saying again to say, why can't we move this brick from point A to point B? Those are questions that we have to say, there is definitely something wrong with this picture. 60% of the world cocoa comes from West Africa, and yet we don't have a single cocoa processing plant. Go figure that. But that is our reality in Africa, and that equation has got to change. This ship must turn, because the game we are playing right now, we're using a losing strategy, and they have been playing a game with a losing strategy for far too long. So I can honestly tell you, as an African, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, and something's got to give.
Would you comment on Chinese investments and major efforts of various kinds in Africa?
The involvement of the Chinese in Africa is an interesting one. You see, when you're hungry and you need food now, you'll get what you can get. So the difference between the Chinese, and I say this to my colleagues in the right places, to say, you all turn around and complain about China coming to Africa, but the reality is when I'm hungry and I need food now, I go to China, they say, how much? I come to the West, they make me jump through so many hoops. By the end of the hoops, I may not even finish. I will die before I finish jumping the hoops. That's the difference. So yes, as much as we may not, we're beginning to pull back now. Because China came in when African countries are having difficulties making ends meet. I mean, ideally, I would like to say, you know what, it's calculated that over $500 billion is leaving Africa every year from the Francophone countries to France. I'd like to say, France, please, stop that. Because we're the poor continent, and we're giving billions of dollars to France. If Africa could be allowed to keep what's rightfully belongs to Africa, maybe, just maybe, we could begin to turn the corner. So China is coming in to fill the gap that somehow the West has vacated. And we realize the issues with China, but now we are beginning to pull back and renegotiating those agreements. The difference between China and the United States in their engagement with Africa and the rest of Europe is that China and the United States never colonized Africa. So when we come to the table as Africans and the Americans on one side and the Chinese on the other side, we are losing the game because we're coming into a fight with knives, and the Americans have 357 Magnums. So until we Africans can now also come to the table properly armed, but at least we're having a conversation from an equal footing. France, we have got to first uproot France from the roots. And those roots are so deep-rooted. How do you take companies that are benefiting out of Africa and try to stabilize the country so the country can move on. Look at DRC. DRC, it's going to take a long time for DRC to be independent because of special interests. All those planes that are taking the mine, the minerals out of the jungle every day, how do you stop them? They're the ones who are going to start the coup. They're the ones who are going to start the civil war. Anything to keep the Africans chaotic while they continue to siphon what they want to siphon. That is also our reality. So even if we were to stop all the corruption from the leaders today, even if we were to stop all the terrorist activities in the different parts of Africa today, those outside forces will never allow it. They'll keep stirring the pot. Because you see, a stable Africa is an Africa that cannot be exploited. I don't know if some of you heard the story about 23, I'm sure all of you know, 23 years ago, there was a group of young men who were having fun in South Africa, and around that time, Equatorial Guinea had just discovered oil, and they cooked up a plan to have a coup in Equatorial Guinea, so while the Guineans were busy fighting a civil war, they're siphoning the oil. So it was sold as a quick investment with huge returns. The only mistake they made was they also wanted to acquire some weapons from Zimbabwe. So half their flight was full of weapons from South Africa. These were non-Africans, by the way. Prime Minister Thatcher's son was actually leading the group. I don't know if some of you can Google the story. There's actually a book on it. She had to fly into Zimbabwe and pay handsomely to get her son out. But he was leading the whole operation. Some guys, the young people were from Britain, Australia, New Zealand. Some of them were mercenaries. So they filled up their big plane, and they stopped in Zimbabwe to pick up more ammunition. But I'm told Mugabe smelled a rat and wondered why young men who are going to hunt in Equatorial Guinea needed such powerful rifles. So he did more investigation. It turns out that they had picked up a diaspora from Guinea, Equatorial Guinea, who lived in the islands, and he was supposed to be put in as the president after a coup would have occurred. But of course, the whole plan was foiled, and those young people were arrested in Zimbabwe. And I do believe the last ones left the prison in Zimbabwe maybe a few years back, but that was 23 years ago. So there would have been a civil war going on after a coup in Equatorial Guinea, and the world will just say, well, here they go, the Africans again. Well, that's all they do. They're always fighting. But people with no gun, not a single gun manufacturing plant in Africa. Where are the endless guns coming from? Who is supplying these young people with endless guns? So there's a bigger picture that I think the world needs to understand. Yes, we have issues with our leaders. Yes, we have issues of corruption, but equally, if we're going to address the issues of corruption in Africa, let's have a bird's eye view. There is humongous corruption coming from outside, and yes, there is also corruption from within. So both have got to be addressed if we are to really begin to get Africa in a position